All right, we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Working Towards Black. This show is a series of conversations between the African diaspora and Africa, diasporans together, just a whole big conversation around Blackness and the idea of working towards Black as a political identity. Today, we have my wonderful friend Krishna that I will be interviewing today. She has an amazing story, and I think this will be fascinating. I want to read, not that I don't know her, but I like to be professional with people. But wait, now I can't find it. Where did you send that to me? Okay,
I think on Facebook.
I thought so too. It was earlier, we've been talking a lot today. That's what it is. Okay. Krishna Davenport, a Wall Street wizard, lover of hip hop, advocate for healing and Black empowerment. Krishna is a mother, wife, and manager of Team Francis.
It's as simple as I can make it.
There's so much to this woman, but I'm sure we'll dig out all of the things. Thank you, Krishna. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I am excited. I got ready. You told me
I
to get ready.
see you pulled it all together. Put the yellow on for me.
Yes,
Oshun energy. I like it.
very my power color. So
Yeah.
yes, super excited to be
So,
here.
you know the show. We've been really trying to get closer to having better conversations around, where we're at as a community and what it means to connect to the continent, who we are in this conversation. You and I are both Southern girls. You not as much as me. You're really more a New Yorker, but you
I'm
got your Southern
Southern
roots.
adjacent. My roots
Adjacent.
are in the
Yes.
South.
Okay, so let's talk about that because I think that
Mhm.
that is one of the really fascinating things about you is that you do have these very Southern roots, which comes with a particular culture, where I think we typically connect. And then you have these very New York roots, which are full of Africans and Caribbeans and African Americans. Tell me how it was, what it was it like for you growing up in a Southern household in the North?
So it was like growing up in the South, but in the North, right? My mother instilled in us a lot of the values. I mean, I grew up with my grandmother and my mother, so it was multi generational. Um, and they probably wouldn't say they gave a Southern upbringing, but that's what it was. Like, it was very connected to the South. It was things that when we were growing up, we saw that kind of differentiated from our friends who might have been from the Caribbean or like from Puerto Rico, or like we grew up in a neighborhood where people were from Puerto Rico, Jamaica, Guyana, and then there were the Americans, but we never saw each other that way. We were just Black kids on a block because that's kind of how this part of New York was. Now other places in Brooklyn, they may have seen differently, but where I grew up, that's what it was. We knew we were Southern, but the only thing we knew different was that our friends had accents. That was pretty much the distinction. But my
Mhm.
mother, like, I just feel like they instilled in us this, like, who we were as Black people first, and that in and of itself fell into this whole Southern way of being, because my grandmother was able to tell us stories of segregation and passing and things of that nature, and that's not something that you hear about growing up in New York. Like, even though New York is one of the most segregated states, this is not a conversation. So I
Mhm.
think with our family, with my mother, my grandmother especially, the the thought process was just to make you as aware of your Blackness, and all the other things kind of fall into place. And so
Mm.
so that's what you all get. I'm fully aware of all of my heritage from both sides of my family, but what you hear from me is the need to understand why people don't understand Pan-Africanism, because that's what I was taught my whole life.
Mm. Even now, that's interesting. So when you say you were taught Pan-Africanism, because I'm Southern, I definitely was raised with Southern values.
Uh-huh.
Don't think that I was taught Pan-Africanism. I think it was definitely an idea of, I'll never forget my grandmama when I was going to Africa for the first time. She was like, "But baby, you don't know those people. Why are you going all the way over there? I don't feel like in Texas, but Texas is we got a whole nother thing going on because Texas only really believes in Texas. So, I
Well, yeah,
mean,
I know. I had this
whatever
conversation
else
with
is
my
going on in the
friends.
world really doesn't.
My friends who are from Texas are like, Texas isn't the South. Texas is Texas. And I'm like,
Texas is a
Tex
country in and of
I'm like,
itself.
that's not how this works. Like, Texas is here. But I don't
Yeah,
even argue
that's what you
anymore.
say. I
So
mean,
I
who are you
think,
to determine that? I
because I'm
mean,
from New York, and in New
who
York,
says
we
we're united?
know how that works, right? There's no state greater than the Great Apple that does. That does. Not even the Big Apple, the great one.
The
But what I was going
great
to say
apple.
about Pan Africanism is the reason I can say that that was the what was taught. It may not even have had the name, right? But like I remember celebrating Kwanzaa. I remember understanding the differences between my friends and I. But the baseline was you're all black, you all are African descendants. That's the end, right? We didn't have these
Exactly.
arguments and conversations that you see all the time. People flew different flags because we went to the parade and everybody had a different flag, but it wasn't judgment. It wasn't that. That I feel like came a lot later. And the junior high school I went to, I think me and my sister and maybe two other black girls there were the probably the only full American, people at the school. That's an exaggeration, but it wasn't that many of us. They were from
Mhm.
Haiti and Venezuela and all these Puerto Rico, all these different places, but we were all still black kids in the 80s. Sure, people teased each other, but I don't think it was the way it is now. This very diasporic war where we're always
Mhm.
trying to outdo each other, where we can't see the roots of the whole tree, you know?
Mhm. Where do you think that started? What do you think has created this in this particular time frame? What's driving that conversation so differently in New York now than it was, 15, 20 years ago?
Well, I think it's something within the younger generation, right? When I like all my friends who are of my generation, my age, even my husband, right? We don't have the discussion of Jamaica versus South Carolina. Like it doesn't exist. And when it has to exist, like when we talk about things like reparations, it gets very tense because he's like, that don't make no sense. We all black, right? And I'm just like, "Woo, woo, we are all black, but there are levels to this, right? So we need to be able to get the money from everywhere. So
Mhm.
it's just things I don't know. It's something in the younger generation, and I noticed it more as I got more involved in social media because I don't have these conversations with my friends. My friends don't indulge in the war. We don't understand it. We understand that there are things that are authentic to the 54 countries in Africa, but we also understand that we have a connection to those parts and we are respectful of it. And the same thing goes for if you're from the Caribbean. Like
Right.
you have to be respectful of it, of the culture, but not under as don't take away the fact that in this country race is the factor. Then comes caste. Race is the first thing. It doesn't really
Yeah.
matter how rich you are. Your people see you and they'll go, that black person. You could be a
Mhm.
billionaire, but if you're black, you're a black billionaire. You're not a billionaire, right? Nobody
Right.
says Oprah is the first billionaire. They say she's the first black female billionaire. There's all these levels in America. And I think that in order for us to actually find some path to unity from the states, the Caribbean, and the continent, we have to remember black first. And I understand that that doesn't exist the same way because of colonialism. I understand it, but we have to get there, right? We can't just be like, well, you know, you look like us, but you're not really of us. Well, where do we come from?
Mhm.
You know,
I
there.
think this conversation with African American, it becomes so difficult, and the diaspora in general, because we have these disconnections. Did your parents grow up teaching you that you were African, like that's where your descendants were from?
Yes. So it's so funny. I was talking to my husband last night, well, this morning, because we were watching a documentary on Teddy Pendergrass and before that, Muhammad Ali. And the term they kept using, and they were showing these old clips. The old clips, and all the old clips, it was Afro American, Afro American, Afro American. That's what I grew up knowing. I didn't know, I mean, I knew black, but we were Afro Americans. Until then, we were black, but then we were African Americans. But my whole childhood, I knew of my descendancy from Africa, and not, and that was the root of where we began. And then my mother obviously put in the part about enslavement and all the things that led up to us being able to be free and in New York, right? So we were taught this all the time. People laugh at me because I always say, like, my mother was like, homework has to be done because at 8 o'clock, Eyes on the Prize is coming on. Everybody's going to sit down and watch it. She was very, very intentional in having us understand our blackness, especially in New York, because people think because you grow up in New York, you don't see segregation and you don't see racism, but you see it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there's sundown towns in Brooklyn,
Mm-hmm.
right? You just
I
don't, they
mean,
don't
we have
call it
deaths to prove it.
that. Right. We have deaths to prove it. We have stories where you knew that you couldn't be in Canarsie after this time of day. That's the definition of what a sundown town was. But because we
Mm-hmm.
just didn't have the language didn't exist in the north, right? It was just like, well, we just don't go in that area. But when you're in the south, the language exists. You know not to cross that
Which I
trail.
prefer.
Right. I prefer it too. And I say it all the time. Like, I grew up in a city where, especially with my background in finance, right? Wall
And I
Street was
want to get into that. Mm-hmm.
Wall Street was a what is it, a pin the stone drop away. But if you didn't have access, you wouldn't even know it was there. Like, you know about downtown Manhattan, but you would be like, well, I just go down there to shop at Daffy's. Do you know that the New York Stock Exchange is there and all these different things? So yeah, I think that is the bigger thing with my mother. She always was exposing us to everything. Like, I danced with Dance Theater Harlem. It was, my blackness has always been as old as this necklace.
Exactly. So you come from this aggressive finance world.
Yes.
I mean, the little thing that she gave me to read does not really go into the power force that this woman honestly is. And there's so many layers to that experience as a Black woman. And I think that a part of what I want the show to do is also shed some light for people that may not be African American, that may not be living here, to understand kind of how your life works and how, how things are playing out for you on a social level. And although I know some of these stories, what was one of the most memorable experiences for you on Wall Street?
Okay, so a good one. I'll start with a good one because the bad ones will be on here till midnight. But a good one was, so when I decided I should start here. I was originally an engineering major, and I took a couple of classes and I was like, no, thank you. I read a book and I was like, you know what? Economics is my thing. Like, I got this. I could do this. So I became an economics major. And I had great professors who prepared me textbook wise, but they didn't prepare me for what I would actually face in the industry. So I took a job straight out of college at this little, what we call a chop shop, meaning it's not like they literally probably set up 4 weeks before I became an employee, because they would set up, get busted by the SEC, set up someplace else. So, or boiler room, that's another term for it. So I worked at this chop shop, and the guy who was mentoring me, when I had the interview, he took me outside. Here's my Lamborghini. Here's a picture of my house, blah, 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 blah. Here's how you make all this money. Okay, great. He was like, but I'm going to give you a piece of advice that nobody else will give you. The fact that you are a woman is going to be challenging because all the men here are going to think that you're a sales assistant, and they're gonna think that you are here for them to sleep with. Those weren't his words, but those were his words.
Mm-hmm.
And the second thing is that once they figure out you're not a sales assistant, they're going to challenge you because you're black. And you can't back down because that's what they're going to do. They're going to spend the majority of their time with every recommendation, every phone call, every sale you close coming after you. They're going to spend the whole time. I've carried that story with me for 26 years, and I've always maneuvered in that way, knowing that the guys that I work with were likely flirting with me or they were challenging me because I was black.
Mm-hmm.
And so my mentor, that the guy I was talking about, Chris was his name, he prepared me the way no other person prepared, nobody else prepared me. And I've been able to manage my career based off those few little things. And he would tell me regularly, if you don't the sales process is very hard. You're calling people you don't know when you're on a trading desk like that, and it will break you. And he was just not there to see me be broken. When they closed the firm, like the SEC broke in the doors, closed the firm, he kept in touch with me no matter where I was, and always reminded me that I didn't have to be like the white guys. Now, he's a white guy from Long Island,
Mm-hmm.
but he never stopped pouring that into me. You have to fight harder. You have to fight harder. And it's allowed me to be on the New York Stock Exchange floor, working for Morgan Stanley, all of these different spaces that I've existed in. What it started with a book, and it started with this one guy telling me the truth, because that's the thing. People don't tell you the truth. They just tell you you're going to get in the industry, you're going to make a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
I've
Mm-hmm.
had white women challenge me, white men challenge me, white men and women challenge me at the same time, undermine my authority. It's a consistent thing. And so for the people watching, I was a director at my firm. So it was like there was only one level higher than where I was when I left. So that tells you that right there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a bad story. There's so many, but there's one that's, I remember working with this woman, and for some reason, she was very jealous. I worked for her while I was getting my license, so it didn't make sense for her to be jealous. But she was very jealous, and I can see that now. But at 20 something, I was hot headed, Brooklyn girl. I was ready to fight all the time. And she said to me one day, we were at lunch. It was me, the only black sales trader, and two other black women who were a sales assistant and the president's executive assistant. We all went to lunch with her and some other of the women that we worked with. And we were having this conversation, and she said, I love the way black women, their bodies look. And we immediately just kind of tuned her out. She was like, because white women, they're built like cats, long and sleek. And black women, they're built like horses, strong. Put your arm out so people can see what I'm talking about. And I was like, so yeah, I'm gonna go. And I looked at my friend Robin, and she was like, no, we need to go like right now because I'm 2 seconds. And I was like, let's just go. Let's just go. And it's that kind of what they see as just like a story. She used to tell things
Mm-hmm.
all the time. Krishna, I know what it's like to grow up poor. What kind of story is this that you have conversation you're having with me? You don't know my life, and your assumption
What makes you think even that I was poor?
right, your assumption is I'm poor because I'm black. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I grew up on Long Island, and my family was Catholic, and we used to fry fish every Friday. And I was like, I'm not the Catholic, nor did I grow up on Long Island. I don't understand how this relates to me. Like, it was a bad situation. And when I left, because I quit, I took my Series 7, and I missed it by 1 point. I had to take it again. Missed it by 1 point, and I just didn't go back. And text, beat me. We still have beepers. Beep, 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 beep. Where are you? When are you coming in? And one day I just called and I was like, no, because I can't take the racism anymore. And I hung up the phone. And she was just like, really? I understand it now because I was an anomaly and everybody was kind of fascinated with me. The president, his name was Kamal, and he used to drop by the office before I started to see her. But once I started, he would drop by the office to see me. I remember Martha Stewart being in the office and he was like, well, meet Krishna. And she felt left
Mm-hmm.
out. And it was just, but it never made sense to me then because I was like, I literally work for you. Like, you signed my check. So
Mm-hmm.
what's wrong with you? But yeah, I mean, I think that's just Black women navigate in different industries, different spaces. They'll all have that same story. It may not be a
Right.
Mary or a Chris Castaldo, but there's somebody in your life who poured into you and someone who tried to rip all of that out of you. And finance is the epitome of that. Like,
So when we're talking about liberation, because
mhm.
this is a hot topic right now with, Beyonce and Black is King, and we're definitely gonna get into that because I can't wait to hear your opinions on this. But where does this conversation of capital
Mhm.
and resources fit into the discussion of liberation?
Well, I mean, I think so. I know there are a lot of people who don't believe in capitalistic societies, which I'm one, right? I exist in a world that is based in capitalism, but I also don't think that this version of capitalism is something we take with us in the space of liberation. You have to have finances, you have to have the ability to trade commerce, and in particular, trade within the stock market and things like that. But it doesn't have to be this way. So I don't know if you or your viewers know, a company recently just launched their own Black exchange where Black people will be able to trade these companies. That's an amazing thing. And that's a space to get us liberated, right? It's not keeping us within the confines of what white people say is okay. To join the New York Stock Exchange is not like you just walk in and fill out an application. You can have all the criteria and still be denied. But this Black exchange allows us to not have to jump through all the loops the way it was. So I
Mm-hmm.
think in order for us to find liberation, we have to have all kinds of people. I am adamant about this, but you have to have the difference between America and our liberation is you have to have people who actually study these things, right? You have to have economists, like friends of mine. You have to have people who have traded and understand how that moves, understanding the next big thing, because the next big thing is the thing that sets you free. Like, I am not a fan of cryptocurrency, not at all. But we're moving to a cashless society. So what do we do? How do we do this? I'm not the expert on that. We have to have somebody who is. Like, I've told you and I've told everybody, try and buy some gold. Some silver looks nice right now. There's a reason that I'm telling you that because that's my expertise.
Mm-hmm.
What I think the problem with all of that is everybody wants to be an expert, right? I am not, and I'm okay with saying it, I'm not an expert on travel. I have a travel question. Tanisha, what do I do? Right?
Right.
I am not a medical doctor. I call my friend, Tamina. Hey, Tamina, I got this bump. What does that look like? We have to get comfortable with there'll be tons of chefs in the kitchen, but we all have a station and we
Yeah.
respect that and we move that way. And a lot of what I'm seeing is that we don't do that,
Well,
you
we
know?
have this weird, like, anti-intellectual push
Yes.
that has been forming, the undercurrents of it, I think, was when we were growing up in the 80s, and like the kind of this push away from, that somehow being academic or somehow being smart was acting white. And I think that this may have a lot to do with integration and
Yes.
just this idea of like trying to figure out what integration looks like. Like, we're really the first real integrated society,
Mhm.
integrated generation, you
Yeah.
know?
And it's
My
dangerous.
yeah, it's been interesting to observe just what our lives are like post
Mhm.
integration and how we start to understand, I think, just like, where we fit into this whole situation. I would argue that we don't, but that's another
We don't.
story. But
We can
I
stick
am
right to that because we
curious.
absolutely do not.
Yeah, and this capitalism thing I think is an interesting conversation because we know that we can't even get close to liberation without resources, without, arms, without certain things that we need in order to protect ourselves, and all of those things cost money, right? How do you reconcile the work that you do with some of the inconsistencies that you feel around capitalism, and what are the things that we need to do to reshape that conversation?
Well, I reconcile it by bringing more of us into the space and sharing that knowledge, right? Because if I am the elder in this particular case and I bring in all these 22-year-olds who I have the ability to mold and not in the way that I may have been molded. And I had to break out of a lot of that mentality in order to get here. But to give them an idea of why you're here. You're not just here to make a lot of money. That's a perk. It's what you do with that money. It's what you do with your influence. It's what you do once you leave these doors, right? A job is a job. You use that money to fuel whatever it is your passion is, but you don't have to become a full part of the system. And because I'm a child, a kid of the 90s, like not a kid, I was a full adult in the 90s, but as an adult in the 90s, that mentality wasn't the one that was driven, right? It was all about cash, money, hoes, blah, 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 right? And
Hmm.
you just were, and that's all you did. That's what you wanted. You wanted cash, you wanted money, and you didn't want to be a hoe. Like that was your whole existence, right? And so that's how I combat it. Like I bring in young black professionals, but I don't bring them in if they have this mentality that I want to be like, Diddy. Like if you want to be like Diddy, I can't help you. I can't give you the tools to get free in an industry that would rather not see you here.
Hmm.
Right? So that's one of the ways I combat it. I think I also combat it by just my overall existence. Most people don't know what I do, and I like it that way. You know,
Yes,
like I
I know.
lots of people. Well, you and my sister have been telling me monetize your professional, blah blah blah, and I'm just like whatever. I don't like because when people find out what I do, then they got 1,000 questions, make me a millionaire tomorrow, and that's not what I want for us, right? I want you to be prepared for what's coming. If you're
Hmm.
staying in the States, I want you to be prepared for what's coming. So I'm going to give you the information. I'm not going to charge you. I'm just going to give it to you. Like you see, I give free stock advice all the time. I could be telling people this and charging them, but I don't do that because there's enough financial planners out there to do that kind of work for me. So that's how I combat that. Now, how we get away from this idea of capitalism, I'm not sure because I think we have so many barriers before we even get to that part. But we have
Hmm.
what I think it was one day on Facebook I said if the path to liberation is not covered in capitalism as you know it, right? Because capitalism doesn't have to exist in this man eat man world. We can
Right.
all and it doesn't have to be socialism either, right? It doesn't have to be full blown socialism, but it has to be a respectful way of seeing each other. Like, yes, I may make $1 million in a month, but what do my taxes look like so that I know that this person, that person is able and can continue? Segregation, we had that, right? Our capitalism looked different when we were segregated. Integration destroyed that because then you're keeping up with what white people are doing and forgetting what your grounding is. Our grounding as a community is that, like I was talking about this on Carrie's show the other night. People in Brooklyn used to give what we call rent parties, and it was to help other people, right? A
Pay their
community,
rent.
right? A community would not see you about to lose your house and not try to help you do something, right? We have to
Mhm.
get back to that as Black people, and it can't be about, oh, I'm doing it for Instagram. It has to be a pure and natural thing. Like, I know Tanisha needs this, so I'm gonna do what I can to do this.
Mhm.
And it we have to get away from that selfish American nature, because that's what it
Mhm.
is. And lots of countries do it. For some reason, we just don't want to do it. I mean, I guess we're getting closer to that with this new revolution, but we still
Whatever
got
that's
some.
gonna look like.
Right, because it's still a baby. I'm even say a fetus, right? It's still baking. But what does that look like? And who are the people whose voices you listen to? We can't just listen to the people who are marching.
You don't
There's
want to listen
more
to
to this
Ti?
than that.
Ti is not for you.
No, his t-shirts are too tight and his other shirts are too tight. He can't even hear himself because his shirts are so tight. So,
I really shouldn't do these things with my friends because I know too much, and then
and everybody, so the listeners, if you choose to follow me on Facebook, you'll know that I despise Ti. I don't think that he should be speaking at all, but definitely shouldn't be speaking for Black people. Um, I try to like Killer Mike, but every time I like him, he does something stupid. Like, I just feel, and I also feel like that's the problem, right? All of our leaders are celebrities.
Mhm.
Martin Luther King was not a celebrity.
But this is the problem when our community stops l- believing that academia and people that study and that do the work are somehow inequipped to speak on these subjects. Like the anti-intellectual push, I think, harms us more. I mean, we have amazing intellectuals in our community. I
Mm-hmm.
created a whole magazine with you guys in it because they're surrounding me, you know? And it always fascinates me how people don't want to listen to science.
No.
They don't want to listen to people that read or write. It's
And that's it
very
right
interesting.
there. I said it a couple of days ago when everybody was in there, got their panties in a bunch over what Bill Clinton said. But I didn't get offended by Bill Clinton because I'm like, white people gonna do what white people do. I know what the relationship between John Lewis and Kwame Stokely Carmichael are. I know not to call him Stokely Carmichael, like I know not to call Muhammad Ali Cassius Clay. Like, why give energy to that?
Mm,
And I get why people get upset. So, like, the initial reaction is to be upset, but the
mhm.
next step is, well, what do I want people to learn from this moment? So I said what I wanted to say. I was like, I don't care what Bill Clinton says. You shouldn't care what Bill Clinton says. If you aren't aware of the relationship, here's some books. Learn something. Like that,
Yeah.
it's that simple. That's how my mother taught me. My kids get so annoyed with me because every time they have a project, I'm like, go get that African American encyclopedia. Do something about somebody Black. My mother did
Mhm.
that with me. Like,
Mhm.
I remember being in the third grade writing about Charles Drew. I was in the third grade
Mhm.
because my mother was like, the African American encyclopedias are there. Get into it. Right? I don't think I ever in my whole academic career wrote about somebody that was white unless they insisted that I did. And then they
Mhm.
might hear from my mother.
What's
So
your vision for your family as we start to make these next moves? You know, like I know that we're thinking about expatriation, we're thinking about at least being able to live between multiple places. What are your thoughts about that? Like how are you thinking about your family and planning for it?
so I am a little more tied to the states than I would care to be, because my husband does not want to leave. Right? He's like, "Where are we gonna go? What are we gonna do? Blah blah blah." That's what he thinks. But we've been having the conversation about the steps. What can we do? And having it with my mother and my sisters as well. Because one of the things my grandmother said to me before she passed was, Black people have lived through this, and I can't believe you guys are going to have to live through it again. And in my head, that was a call to not live through it again if I didn't have to.
Mm-hmm.
So we're having the conversations. I'm not sure when we're going to make the decision, but in the short term, right, while we're here, I know that there are certain, I talk about this all the time too. While Black people are here, there are certain things that need to be had, right? We need jobs, we need money, we need to be able to feed our families before we leave and go, which is the natural thing to do. Like, if anybody is a fan of Malcolm X, he used to say all the time, the natural thing at this point is for us to leave and go back to one of these places in Africa, home, right? But before we do, we have to get a few things in order, because you never know when you're going to need to come back, or who might still
Mm-hmm.
be here that you got to come back to get. So you have to get things in order in the States first before you start, moving on. And that's where we are. Like, that's where we are right now. We're in the process of making sure our home is taken care of. My mother is able to go if we go. She's ready to go. She's like, well, where are we going? So there's that. I mean, she goes back and forth, but sometimes she's just like, where are we going? Can we go? I don't want to live here anymore. So, because, Trump makes everybody crazy. So, yeah, like, I think that it's, for us, it's still relatively early, but we're
Mm-hmm.
having the conversations more and more. This, like, what's the next steps? We aren't sure. I have two sons, and it doesn't mean any different if you have daughters, but I know my sons are not safe. My son is 14 and he's 5'7". People don't see a boy; they see a
Yeah.
man, even though he's only 14. So I really think about those things, like them going places without us. What does that look like? Well, it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
look like anything, because they aren't going anywhere without us. We're going to drop you off. We're going to pick you up. We're going to turn on all the tracking devices on your phone. Like, you're not going to be out of our sight. And that
Mm-hmm.
sucks, because I didn't live like that. My mother was like, here's some quarters and a token.
Please, please take some time for yourself so I can take
You
some
know?
time for myself.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's a layered conversation that all Black people need to start having. If you're
Mm-hmm.
staying here, are you registered to have a gun? This is a part of staying here. Are you ready to protect your family? If you're staying here, are you hell bent on going anyplace else? Or are you just not sure? So then connecting people with the right people. Like, I gave somebody your name the other day. I was like, oh, you think about leaving? You need to talk to Tanisha, right? Go follow her right now. Here's her Facebook page, right? So we all have to start doing that. Like, when I hear people say that, I put them to you. And when people want to stay and they need ways to navigate that, people send them to me. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's the balance. Like, we have to do the work on both sides, because today you might want to stay. Tomorrow you'll be like, and I'm out. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that we just, if we're preparing, we can go, okay, I've had enough. I'm leaving.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
leaving, And again, that starts with
What
the
were some of
academic shit.
the what were some of the like what were some of these steps? Like what got you to this place where you're like, yeah, I could figure out how to leave? Like what were the things that led up to it? I know for me it was for whatever reason Trayvon Martin just took me out and I went to Anguilla. What was it for you?
It was Mike Brown. I was in Connecticut on a beach with my family, and I lost my cell phone. And I was frantic, like frantic. Oh my God, my work phone, blah, 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 blah. I was frantic. We were on a charter bus, and we got on the charter bus to come back to Brooklyn. And I happened to log into my iPad and see what happened with Mike Brown. And all the other superficial stuff just melted away. And I started thinking then, like, I was like, okay, so how am I going to work in this place that will kill my sons? Corey was probably about, maybe he was like 1.5, 2, almost 2 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, can't do this. So I used to be on Twitter quite heavy, tweeting, so what's happening, blah, blah, blah. And a friend of mine was like, well, there are all of these marches and actions starting to happen. And I was like, well, tell me when there's one in Brooklyn. And she was like, you could do the one in Brooklyn. And I was like, girl, stop. And she was like, well, then she just put out this tweet. I was doing the one in Brooklyn. So I was able to then do this whole march. And because I am the pessimist that I am, I was like, it's going to be me and my 10 friends. That's going to be it. Because all my friends registered. That's going to be it. And then it turned out to be over 200 people in
Wow.
this teeny tiny park in Brooklyn. And I didn't feel alone. And that was the starting point. I started not that I wasn't fully aware. I'm a black woman in America. I'm fully aware of what's happening. But I really started diving into divesting from this country at that moment. And
Mm-hmm.
then fast forward to when we got the Trayvon Martin verdict, and they weren't going to do anything. And I remember sitting on the edge of my bed with Corey, who was little, crying, just holding him and crying. He was so little, he didn't know what was going on. Crying and crying and crying, and looking out the window. And we have like three younger. They're adults now, but they were teenagers sitting on the edge of the street, and they looked so hopeless. And that started it for me. I was like, we can't stay here. How do we stay here? And I remember saying it to my mother. How do I raise my sons in this country? How?
Mm-hmm.
And it only got worse and worse. And every time I turned around, there was a new um, hashtag, another one, another one. And then you started to see the women, and then it was just more and more. And the more they happen, the more I start thinking about how we get out of here. And on top of that, the political situation that we're in right now is highly disturbing to me. It's not that we haven't had racist presidents before, even in my lifetime. All the Bushes were racist, Bill Clinton, all of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever. But this feels like when my mother used to make me watch Eyes on the Prize. And I don't want to live through that. I don't want
Mm-hmm.
to live through it. So that's kind of where it started for me.
Mm-hmm. So when you dream of what the best life looks like for your sons,
Hmm.
what does that look like? Like, can you, I've been trying to challenge people to imagine because, we talk a lot about what we don't like and what, frustrates us. But what I find is that people have a very hard time imagining what else it could look like. For you, what does that next space look like?
I mean, for them, it looks like the ability to walk into any store, wherever, whether it's on the continent, in the Caribbean, in the United States, whatever, and not be a target. For my boys, it looks like I can see the fear in their eyes when we watch the news, right? I want them to be able to watch the news and not be afraid. So that's what it looks like for me, especially with us just not ready to take the step to actually leave right now. It looks like freedom here. I don't know how we get that. I mean, I think my boys have a pretty amazing life, and it is pretty decently arranged where they aren't afraid to exist because they're still young, right? One is 7 and one is 14. They're always with us. But my 14-year-old is hyper aware because he was a junior scholar with the Schomburg, and they are pushing that message like black, 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 black. But it just looks like not having to consistently be like, the reason this is happening is because we're black. There's a hurricane because we're black. Everything is because we're black, because we're black, because we're black. Like, I want them to be okay and understand that black is powerful. Black
Mhm.
is
Yeah.
if, just to take without going all into Black is King, but there's a part of that song, that second song, where she says, "Freedom is your birthright. it was written like it was written in the footnote. I don't want their freedom to be a footnote. I want them to be free. And I want them to understand what that means and what that looks like. And I think we're doing a pretty good job because they're kind of like pretty politically savvy. So they kind of understand it even at a young age. But I just don't want to have to always explain that this guy was murdered because he was black. This woman had to defend her family because she was black. Like, I want them to understand that. Like, I want them to have an idea. So I talk to them a lot about the Black Panthers. Specifically Fred Hampton. So I want them to be able to go, that can't happen in our free black society anymore, ever again, right? So, I mean, I hope that answers the question. It is a hard question. Like, I have to think more about it, but the low hanging fruit is that I just want them to be free. Like, I want that to be the answer. They're free.
What do you want for you?
Oh gosh. Oh, there's not much that I don't have. Like, I have lived a pretty, I'm from Brownsville, from Brooklyn. People hear that and they're like, oh, the ghetto, right? But I have lived this pretty amazing life that has allowed me to see different countries and be different places. So I understand what life looks like outside of this bubble of America. And for me, right now, freedom looks like being able to just rest. I haven't had a lot of time to rest. Quarantine has given me that time. My whole life, my whole career has been dancing, and then college, then dancing while in college, then career. Have a baby, go back to work. Have another baby, go back to work. Always climbing this corporate ladder. So for me, freedom just looks like rest. It looks like putting my hair in a bun, turning off all the lights, and reading a book, right? That's really what I want for myself. And I don't always feel like I have that here in the States because we are bombarded with news 24/7 and your phone's always bling, 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 bling. Like, I have gotten to a place where I literally turn my phone off at a certain time of night because
You
I
have
just
to.
want peace, right?
Yeah.
So I guess that's what it is. Freedom for me looks like a peace of mind, state of peace.
You also have some new entrepreneurial journeys that I'd like to discuss. Can you tell us about them?
So, one, I guess let's start with the most important one, right? The most important one is the project that I've been working on about Black motherhood in the time of quarantine. What does that look like? Because every story that I see every morning when my husband is watching the news is about white women and their plight. And I'm just like, what about us? What does it look like for Black women now? We are career women, we are stay-at-home moms. All of this is a change for all of us. So what does it look like? So we launched a project in June where I started with a bunch of my friends, and that's moved into a bunch of their friends and random strangers emailing me, telling me what it looks like to be a mom, a Black mother in this time. I've simply asked people for a picture because I wanted to be clean and crisp and straight to the point. A picture, which I display in black and white, and 3 or 4 words. Tanisha wrote a whole essay. 3
I
or
don't
4
know
words.
how to do these 3-word things. This is why I don't tweet. I don't even know how to tweet. Too small
Well,
characters.
215 characters is not too small characters. But I kept it simple. 3 or 4 words to express exactly how you feel. And what that did for me and other women was it let you know you weren't alone. It also let every woman that has written to me like, oh my God, thank you for doing this, has said it was like a journal entry. Because it's not easy to say, I feel whatever you felt. Like for me, There was a point where I was highly annoyed about the kids always being around, right? Why is the internet so slow? Because they're all here and they're all plugged in, right? So what did that look like? And a bigger part of that was society tells us it's not all right for us to not want to be mothers, even if we are. And I wanted to dismantle that. Sometimes being a mother is it's hard all the time, but sometimes it's so hard that you just need to get on your bike and go for an hour,
Mhm.
maybe two.
Mhm.
Go sit in the park and turn your phone off and act like you don't have a kid or
And
two or
for Black
whatever.
women, that's definitely not the story that they allow. They don't allow a lot of space, yeah,
They don't
for that
allow us
price.
space. They don't allow us the space. They also don't allow us to be human, right? Because Black women aren't looked at as human. And I wanted to humanize the women that I know and essentially the women that I didn't know. I wanted to give a face to it. Yes, here some women submitted pictures with their kids, and that's okay. As long as they were the center and these words expressed what you felt. And I could tell when it wasn't that. And I wrote back to some women and was like, that you're not being honest with me. Like, I need you to be honest, right? Don't tell me it's fulfilling, all these, you know, catch words, because that's not reality.
Mm-hmm.
So that to me is the most important project because, it, you know, I love my people and I love Black women and I just want us to be seen for the powerhouses that we always are. I don't know a Black woman. There's not a Black woman in my life who's not a powerhouse. And I know some crazy ass women, but they all have a strength, and I wanted to put that on display for the world. Um, and then the other, and that's at, I forgot, social media. That is at Baobab Wellness. We have a blog, we have Instagram and Facebook, and you can follow us, Baobab Wellness, everywhere. On Twitter, we actually tweet. And any moms who are interested in being in the project, I'm going to actually put up the the form today, later on today, so that you can sign up for it. So that's the most important project. The second project is my spirits company, which literally started out of necessity when I was a stay-at-home mom with my boys. I didn't want to buy drinks from the store anymore. It's like, I don't want to do that. It's too much sugar. So I'm going to start making everything. Yes, I am that mother. I make everything. I make everything from scratch. It's ridiculous. So I don't know. I posted a picture. Like, I had made some ginger beer because it was a challenge. I was like, I'm going to make ginger beer, homemade ginger beer. It's my favorite thing. And I posted a picture, and then all of a sudden it was like, can I get that? And so from that post, it grew into a business, where we do luxury spirits that are based in teas and lemonades. Um, but we use quality fruits that we only source what's here in New York. Like, you won't get watermelon anything from me after September. I'm done. I'm like, watermelon season is over, right?
Yeah.
And peaches, like, no peach stuff is getting done. It's August. Peach season is over. I'm done with that kind of stuff. So I grow all the herbs that we use. Um, I make every drink by hand. Well, and I have a blender, but mostly by hand. And um, we have partnered with different, like, women organizations and have been like drink sponsors. We're the drink sponsor for the Vitamin M Suite. We did a project with Her Power Space in Miami, where we provided all the drinks. Her Power Space is a co-working space, but we provided all the drinks for an event that they had. Um, and it's my baby. It's still very new. Like, I've been doing it for a while, but the business part of it is still very new. And the name is T is the name. Very simple. Our Instagram and Facebook are different. The Instagram is the letter T is the name, because when I was thinking about this, I was like, it's the name. That's what it is. And so if you read it as one word, it's tis the name, and so we stuck with that. All of our drinks are being rebranded to incorporate my love of hip hop and Wall Street. So all the names will change, but it's like a fresh new infant, and I love it. I love
I'm
it.
proud of you. So I always end every show with the same question to people.
Okay.
What is Blackness to you?
So that's a perfect question for this whole like Black is King situation, right? So Black to me has always been royal. Black to me has always been a step ahead, above the curve, and excellent, but not in the sense of this bad Black excellence, right? It's not that. It's just to look at who we are as a people on the continent, on the on this continent and African continent, in the Caribbean, and see all the things that we have been able to overcome and not become a bitter people, a selfish people, a mean people. To me, that's the kind of excellence I look at. And while I think we need to get angrier, I don't think that we are the kind of people who can be changed where we become the oppressor. That's not who we are. Um, for me, it's not like I grew up with Essence magazine and Ebony. That was the kind of beauty I knew. So that's the kind of beauty I expect from Black people, right? Not not this manufactured blah blah blah. When I think about beauty, I think about us in the purest form of beauty. Like we wake up and it's just like, damn, fly. Puff in my eye, still fly. T-shirt rip, fly. Like that's what I think about when I think about blackness and Black people. And then I think about Blackness as a strength, right? There's strength in this melanin. What you do with it is the challenge, right? But there's strength in it. Every morning you wake up and you have a world to fight, and that doesn't go away no matter where you are. But you have this world that is against you. What you do with that strength? You know, for me, it's raising two boys to understand their role as men, not downplaying or hurting women for fun and kicks. There's no seed sowing around here. You could date, but you're not going to treat women like shit, or you're going to have to deal with me. You don't have to deal with her. You're going to deal with me, right? That kind of thing. It's being in love with my partner. Like people don't understand what real Black love looks like. It's not boisterous. It's not all that stuff. Like I love my husband. Y'all hear the jokes about him or me telling the jokes about him all the time. But we're just a fun couple. We love each other. We get on each other's nerves, but we love each other. That is a part of Blackness for me. That love, that unabashed, I will fight you for my wife kind of love. I have that, and I'm so thankful for it. I'd fight for him too, but he's bigger, and I'm 5'3", so ain't no real need for me to fight that. Yeah,
I feel like you're 5'1". I feel like you're 5'1" like me. I do.
Tanisha, I'm like
Mm,
this much taller than
I
you,
feel like
and I
you
had
are.
on sneakers when we met. I had on sneakers, and I was like, "Hello, little person."
I got a big personality.
So that's what short people
Girl,
get.
thank you so much for this conversation.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate you and I'm proud of you. I'm excited to see what comes. And I'm getting your room ready on the continent because I know you're coming. So it's good.
And I have to come for a wedding, so I might just stay.
You never know.
And
It's not my wedding, by the way.
but if it was, I'd still be there. But I have a cousin, my niece is getting married, and I was like, I mean, once we get there, we could just move all over.
Well, guys, thank you guys for tuning in to Working Towards Black. Black as a political identity, Black as a way of unifying us. Black as the strength and beauty that it is. And please look out for the next show, which is every Tuesday and Thursday. This Thursday, I have a very good friend from Senegal that will be on. He will have a lot to say. Um, Free Black Woman magazine launches tomorrow. Please subscribe. www.freeblackwomanmagazine.com. Krishna is one of our contributors, so be sure to read her article. Her column is radical Black womanhood. Yeah, it's good. It's good. It's good. It's good. And yeah, so thank you everyone. Have a wonderful Tuesday. And anyone that is within this hurricane, is it a hurricane or tornado? Whatever it
It's
is, be safe. Be safe. All right, guys. Thank you.
bye bye.